Talk, 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 talk. Art of the Zodiac presents Talk, 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 talk. Okay, I don't know if actually anyone's going to be here, but this is wonderful. Hello,
Hello.
Cameron.
I'm so excited to be here.
And I am excited to be here. So I'm getting better with my introductions. I am CV Henriette of Art of the Zodiac, and I am super stoked to talk with you today. Cameron Cassidy of Omegastrology. You are an astrologer, a yoga teacher, a speaker of many languages, a printer of posters and books,
Yes.
a podcast host, and the co-organizer of KazimiCon.
Yes. Yeah.
What I miss?
No, that's it. It's many hats. Yeah, thank you so much for that, the introduction. Yeah, I guess I don't know where to start. There's lots
Am I missing anything? Maybe
that's it. Thank God. I don't need more.
Don't worry, it's okay. I ask questions. All you have to do is answer.
Okay.
And I suppose if you really don't want to answer, you don't have to, but that could be awkward if you just stare at each other for an hour or so. But
well, I'm fine with that too.
I've had worse. So Saturn and Pisces. I feel like we can't not talk about anything first.
Yeah, I know. It's a little bit urgent, I feel like right now. Very precedent.
I feel like it should just start like pounding rain everywhere.
I know. That's actually so funny you just said that, because the funniest thing happened this morning. I literally got in my shower and the water came out with a pressure that I have never seen before. I started laughing out loud. I was like, okay, Kronos, we're doing it like this, huh? So that's really funny you said that. I know. It's like, bring on the rain.
That's amazing.
I know. That was comical.
I woke up to a little bit of snowfall this morning. I think I almost killed someone in my car. Crisis averted. It was a moment of fear, but it's okay. We all survived. I mean, there was no incident. Okay. But, you know, those moments driving, you're like, where'd that person come from?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad you're all right.
I'm all right. They're all
I
right.
am scared though when you just think like, you know, on a full moon with a Saturn ingress, just like it's heavy, you know, it's like just everything that you can imagine that is going on right now. Like,
oh God, you're right. You know, it's in that moment I was just thinking of like, I don't like driving, and it's probably best that I don't leave my house thinking about transits. But you're like, what's that mean when you're like, oh my God, I'm Saturn for someone. I have the potential to like take someone out. I mean, that's terrifying on so many levels, but that's an interesting thing to think about.
It really is, and that's something I try not to think about too much, because it's like you don't even know, like the butterfly effect, you know, like what if like me just being late one day, like maybe like, you know, there's so many different ways all these little things we do could just unfold in ways we don't understand. Like you said, you could be someone's Saturn transit and never even know. Like,
I mean, I would probably know if I hit them with my car. I would be very
well, in that case, yes, but perhaps it was like one of those things, like you flicked a butterfly and someone in, you know, Africa, you know, right, it's just we don't know these things. It's just
if I start thinking about the butterfly effect, I'll never leave my house. That's all.
Let's hope that like most of the time that isn't how it happens, but like also everything's connected, so
here we go.
Yeah, I love that we're just starting off and going like so meta with things. It's like Saturn's. I feel like that's just very like in line with this placement, like trying to rationalize or like concretize like the divine, you know. It's impossible. We can't do it.
We're literally thinking about like Pisces, like all of it, the butterfly effect, and we're Saturnian trying to make sense of it.
Right.
Your camera keeps like doing this like freezy thing. Do you know if it's an internet connection? Can we?
Oh, I really hope not. Shoot.
Your audio sounds good, so we will make do.
Dang. Okay.
Let me
I'm
know.
not sure.
Am I going out at all?
No, I'm actually not seeing anything on either end for either of us.
Okay, let me see
Um,
if I
but
can.
why don't I just like I'm just gonna switch that and come back
Oh,
and maybe
oh,
do this.
cool. I'm
Okay.
gonna like close 1,000 things and seeing if that helps as I'm staring at my computer. Sorry, everyone, for getting way too much of my face right now. Do, 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 do. I don't know how the internet works. I said that out loud. Okay. There we go. Okay, you're clear now.
Okay, good. Let's hope that fixes it.
Okay. I love this. I don't know what I love. Um, it's funny we're having this conversation. Well, actually, no, I want to, before I dive in, because I was
Yeah.
reading, I was thinking about your bio, like the about me section on your website, and you said something to the effect of, I will show you your fortune and misfortune. And I thought that was like brilliant.
Yeah, I mean it's
Very
how
Saturnian.
it is in a way. I mean, I think that's really what its purpose is. You know, I don't work with people to dazzle them. It's like I want to help you. This is a tool that is for us to improve our lives and improve our well-being. And so if that comes at the expense of having to talk about difficult things or reveal um, difficult configurations for the future,
Yeah.
even it's being real about it, that's what helps. So that's my MO always. Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. Um, and that's also what I do love about horary astrology, because
Yes.
it's um it's just so concrete, and like you get a yes or a no.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with natal astrology, it's tough because you're looking at one chart that's giving so much information about like a whole
Yeah.
human life. And it's hard to get as binary with things because we are people of multiplicity. You know, it's like there's no, it's hard to concretize all of that. But like, I try to do my best to keep, an awareness talking with someone about their natal chart. Like, what are the areas that you can find success and happiness and prosperity with, and where are the areas that you're going to encounter blockages, and how can you work around that? That's always my goal in terms of helping people.
Um, I want to ask so many questions stemming off from this, but I'm going to keep it. I want to keep the Saturn moment until
Okay,
we've really exhausted Saturn here.
got it.
So, speaking of realness,
Mm,
I'd love to know. There's probably some people watching this who are maybe about to enter a Saturn return in Pisces, or maybe a Saturn square,
mm,
and or just some people who are just generally curious to know what this movement of Saturn means. And
mm.
I know you have some thoughts. Would you share them?
Yeah, definitely. So Saturn ingress is definitely, this is a huge deal. This is affecting like a third of our global population in like a major, like life transitional kind of way. Because, like you kind of mentioned,
Yeah.
everyone's either going to have their Saturn either in a mutable sign, which is like Pisces, where he's
Yes.
moving into a sign that's configured with this in, by square or opposition or by conjunction, which is the return. So, a third of the global population will always be having that life shift, but, it's switching up today for everyone. So
Okay.
what,
Can
oh
I
yeah,
pause there for a moment?
yeah.
I've never thought about it like that. And that's so just like a game changer. Like always
Mm.
knowing that when Saturn's having a transit, like that it's a third of the global population. I've never thought about it in those terms. So
Yeah,
thank
I
you. I just
guess.
wanted to like have everyone sit with that for a moment because that's pretty big.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know if I have either, but it just like when you were talking about that, I just like see that in my head, like, yeah, like that's
Yeah.
about to light up this whole global, axis for mutable people, which,
Yeah.
yeah, my heart's going out to all of the Pisces, the Gemini, the Sag and Virgo folk. Because yeah, it's gonna be it's again like being real. Saturn transits test us. It's not easy, but it always gives us the reward of coming out afterwards with the satisfaction and gratitude that we went through what we did most of the time. And it's also, I will say, like, it's not necessarily going to be you know, I'm not trying to fear monger it that it's going to be horrible for everyone, because it
Sure.
won't be. A lot of people have amazing Saturn
Yeah.
transits. The crux of the matter is that these are major life shifts that happen. So if you have, you know, especially Saturn in Virgo or Pisces, you're just naturally hitting a really crucial age right now that
Hmm.
is a time for you to reframework your life around finding what you really want to do, you know, figuring out who you really are. Um, and then, of course, with everyone's chart, it's affecting a specific area of their life differently. But I think um, just thinking about what Saturn and Pisces means and what it invites for all of us, like we talked about, like we just said earlier, like that
Yeah.
notion of how do we like make a container for the infinite, like how do we try to understand or rationalize what's beyond us, and we can't. So I think Saturn's message is always, you know, things just take time. Healing isn't linear. There's no one way to going through that process for anyone. So yeah, I just think that the best things that we can all do is, especially as it does seem like we're on the brink of a lot of global change. Like, yeah, it is a global shift because Saturn's changing, but like there's some other astrology happening that definitely looks like this, like we're kind of buckling down. And so I think in lieu of that, like what we can do is just making time to be with ourselves, to not rush ourselves, to understand that life is, you know, it's all in flow, it's all in flux. And the Saturn is like wanting to like break up, like that kind of Piscean
Uh,
wave that rolls over all of us. So I think just whatever we can do to, um, yeah, connect with the piece of ourselves that remembers that flow and that everything is okay. Um,
as you were talking, I was just thinking about Saturn and Pisces is like the ultimate like buzzkill. Like just imagine. I mean, I don't know what my personal. I'm like I don't drink, or not that I know this person, but like you know that moment when you're some sort of like really like spaced out place, however you get there,
mm,
and Saturn's like, but wake up, there's things to tend
right.
to.
Yeah, it's definitely like just teeter-tottering between like the dream world and reality. You know, it's like when I think about it too, like Saturn is like the highest planet, and Pisces sort of archetypally as like the final sign of winter.
Yeah,
It is like a lot of like finalities, and like that being on the very end of something always means you're teetering on just like the next beginning. So in that way too, I feel like, as you mentioned, it's like that portal that's kind of like bringing us back and forth between like wake up, it's reality, like this stuff has to be real, it can't just exist up here. Like I think we're going to see a lot of impulse
yeah,
to take a lot of what's up here and really ground it, because a we're going to need to for just the survival of humanity. People need, you know, healing arts, people need astrology, people need natural medicine, right? Like all of these fields
yeah,
that need to be concretized and systemized in a way that not like everything needs structure, and like we need a
sure.
governmental board to oversee like all these things, but like it needs to like seep deeply and anchor itself into the consciousness, which I think is going to be happening. But at the same time, we're going to experience that pushback of like, how do we regulate, you know,
Mm,
so-called like spiritual fields, and how are we going to see the issue of the government or, you know, authoritative controlling bodies trying to get their hands in manipulating that? And I think that's going to be another really difficult thing we'll have to face with Saturn and Pisces too.
mm. Two things came to mind. One,
Mm,
thinking about like a change in consciousness, and so anytime there's a change in consciousness, there is that it can be bring about a certain sort of challenges or difficulty or even violence, right? Like something.
mm,
I think Saturn, a sense of tearing, right? Like creating something new. There might be that, like you said, that backlash. Um, but also thinking about, mm, how should I say, you know, it's interesting, like thinking about like, I wonder what precedents we have for this. Like thinking about how, like, I don't know, I wonder, we're curious to know, like, thinking that like massage therapy now is like standard in hospitals and things like this. And so, yeah,
Mm.
really thinking about the logistics of things and how, like, what it's going to be like. I don't know why, but I was thinking about something that's happening, and this is, I don't know if this is particularly related to this transit, but thinking about something like the marijuana industry. It's legal everywhere, and sort of what's
Mm.
happening with that, or
Yeah.
even like psychedelics, like all of these things that
Yeah.
we're now putting these structures around,
Hmm.
or they're being more integrated into mainstream, I should say.
Right, right, exactly. And I think like what we saw with Saturn and Aquarius, like in a way, it's kind of interesting because that, you know, he's Saturn, he's so dignified and strong there that in a way, like
Yeah,
that brought on how can we officialize and like legalize or, um, you know, bring these kinds of alternative modalities to a sense of, yeah, legality or
yeah,
concretization, like we said. And now it's like that afterflow part of like, well, how are we dealing with like the societal, social, spiritual repercussions of like making that access to have everyone? It's like, okay, yeah, now we signed the paper, like you can do it, but like that next step of like, what is the repercussions for that? And like, how do we have to do like the after management of like those kinds of things? It's like, it's easy to just sign the step one, but now that after piece of like, how does that integrate into society?
sorry, I was having some
Are you
technical
seeing
difficulty.
me? Okay.
Yeah, did you go away for a minute?
No. I
Ah,
I mean, I think I saw you freeze for a moment.
okay. I'm wondering. Oh, this
Were
is
you
so
able to hear
frustrating. I
me?
think it's maybe I can hear you too. I can totally hear you. So if we're okay now, we'll keep going.
Okay. Did you hear me before? Was the audio continuous or was it just the visual?
Oh, the audio. No, the audio was continuous. I just had to blow up like a little thing at the end, and I think my internet was going in and out. I apologies. Apologize for these technical difficulties, and I can't speak today.
It's
Um,
it's
but
all
I did
good.
hear what you said, and I love the site. So if I'm going to try to recap here, Saturn in Pisces was when we made the laws, we brought the things in, we signed the papers, we made it official. And Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn in Pisces is now sort of dealing with the mess, dealing with the reality of the situation, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely see it. Could be, yeah, will be playing out like that for sure. Mhm.
Um, I don't want to. I could keep going on about Saturn with you, but I actually want to talk a little more about you personally. I thought we had to sort of do that homage to Saturn, but I'm going to sort of get
Yeah.
into your. I'm going to get into your life now. What is your
Okay.
relationship with Saturn?
Well, that's a great question. He's on my ascendant, so him and I have quite a relationship. Yeah. I guess, you know, just like the quick things that come to my mind about it, like since a really young age, I guess I was always pretty austere or quiet or shy, or I mean, I also have like a pretty flamboyant side of myself, but like just in like a
Yes.
general, like when you first see me, kind of like get the like the RBF, you know, like, are you okay? Like, no, I'm all right. I'm usually either just like content and like my face just looks like that, um, or I'm just like, I don't know, like contemplating, like I don't know, you know, Saturn rules time, right? So I feel like Saturnians in
Yes.
general are just weighed down a lot by the past and the future and just getting into their own heads, like way more than we need to. So as a Saturnian in that way, I feel like, yeah, I've just spent a lot of my life kind of always thinking about the future. Or I mean, Saturn also rules my midheaven, so it's like this preoccupation with like my identity and my reputation. And like I don't know, I was like my parents divorced when I was really young, and so I
Okay.
was had to, I guess, sort of was just more like had to be more mature in some ways, you know, just like
Yeah.
organizational things. But yeah, I mean, it's like time wise, um I do feel like that it's easy to get into a pattern of like feeling the weight of just holding too many things on your back, like,
Yeah.
when the Jupiter is like, "No, no, no, like, relax, like, life is okay, like, it's easy." But I'm generally prone to, yeah, being more uptight with myself. Yeah.
Was that always, well, are you an only child?
I have two older sisters. So I was the baby of the family.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, because I don't know. My older sister, my oldest sister is like a Capricorn rising, so she was very much like a Saturn for my sister, my middle sister and I, like when we were younger. And
Yeah.
like, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like at the same time where it was like I had heard like looking at after me, and like my parents were there, of course. I'm blessed to have like I have my parents are still in my life and wonderful people. Um, but yeah, I just feel like I was kind of independent. Like I was always sort of autonomous, doing my own thing. So also like, kind of loner,
Yeah.
like Saturn can be like the lone wolf kind of. So that was sort of me too.
Do you think a lot of that was that pressure, that weight of time? Was that mostly internal, or did you get it from externally as well? Like, were your parents strict at all, or was there someone kind of enforcing it, or was it just strictly this sort of internal Saturn experience?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. I think it was maybe a mixture of both, but I'd say it maybe first came from an internal level because part of like the story of my chart and my life with Saturn at
Yeah.
least, like my moon is in Pisces going applying to square Saturn. So and
Okay.
that's my moon's in my 10th house. So I've had like this sort of fear when I was younger because um, I was going to a Catholic school and I was like this really closeted, like queer kid who wasn't comfortable, like always, in my own body, like struggling, like I struggled with body dysmorphia and, fitting in and having to, yeah, be a part of like a culture that like was very conflicting for like figuring out who I was and spiritually, like what I believed about, God or you know, however you want to look at that. It was raised Catholic at least. But yeah, so I think that like internalized a lot of those emotions and feelings around time and my identity in a way that again is sort of like that protection mechanism because of that vulnerability of um, my moon that like I needed to uh, prove myself somehow. And yeah, so I think that's all just a part of it.
That's an interesting um, way to put it, and that does make sense. A very vulnerable moon in in Pisces in the 10th house, very apparent, aspecting Saturn.
Yeah.
Like, were you always super? I wonder with that combination too. If you were always super like intuitive, like there was a sense of just feeling everyone's stuff.
Yeah, I mean, since I was really young, I've definitely had a like just always been, I mean, dreamer, like right, of course, like daydreaming too much in school, but like also just like I loved dreaming and like the information I would see or have in my dreams. Like since I was young, like I always felt connected to like, the other side in a way of like realizing that things were happening in my dreams that like I would see playing out or like seeing things ahead of time that would
Yeah,
like and so I was just that was always kind of there, and I never really understood it, because I think I tried to block it for a little while, um, but, like, all these sort of occult metaphysical fields have sort of always been orbiting in my life. I mean, I started collecting, like, statues of Egyptian deities when I was, like, 6 and have had, like, an altar in my room of, like, different crystals and wands and, like, things, when I was younger that I was just naturally drawn to a lot of those things. So there's definitely a piece of it that all along there's been, like, that without maybe even knowing, like, that kind of guiding
yeah.
hand somehow.
When okay, so you from the this sort of internal Saturn, right? You mentioned in your bio that you
Mhm.
started learning Latin at 8 because you asked your mother to teach you, right?
I
Is this
did.
true?
This is true.
So,
So my
tell me about this. What was the inspiration? Did your mother speak Latin? Tell us about your mother.
Yeah, it goes back to so her father, my grandfather was he was a lawyer, but he studied classics, so Latin and Greek. And so he
Okay.
raised my mom, you know, in a way where I guess, yeah, she always was kind of taught to value the importance of languages, and she loved them. She did. So she studied Latin and several modern languages. Like she wrote her thesis in college about like Spanish and Italian Renaissance art history. So she was like, and she studied and lived in Spain and for a few years. So she's, yeah, been a huge influence for me because growing up, yeah, she speaks Spanish and French and Latin and Italian. And so like all of that was sort of like absorbing what she had, I don't know, in terms of like and it wouldn't always be, it wasn't like I started speaking this right away. It was like there was words here and there, and like, you know, I had like a notebook, and I remember for a while, she would teach me like one Latin word a day, and my very first word was astronauta, or astronaut, which is like sailor of the stars. So I thought that was really cute too, that like my little notebook is like the first one I wrote was astronaut. Yeah.
Wow, was your mother into astrology as well?
She wasn't. I mean, she was open to it. And she loves it now. But yeah, I don't think she ever had like a particular strong interest in astrology.
So you're 8 years old and you had this notebook that said Sailor of the Stars in Latin, and you were like absorbing all of these languages from your mother, who also speaks multiple languages, and
Mhm.
you had an altar. When is when is like, do you remember when you first found, was it magic or astrology, but like the thing that like you're like, okay, this is my thing, like my practice, and what was
Uh-huh.
that?
Well, I would say it honestly first started with yoga. Um,
Okay.
because it's kind of interesting because how I first came, I mean, I first got into astrology in any capacity at like 11 because my oldest sister, who was like 18 at the time, was really into reading charts, and she showed me mine, and I was like, what is this, like how does this work? And you know, reading like cafe astrology, you know, kind of delineating all my placements, like wow, like that's me. And so that was like definitely the first really strong awareness I had with it. And then you know, in middle school, like yeah, 11, 12, like being in like library class and like reading other people's charts and like getting in trouble because it was a Catholic school, and like we had to put those getting people's charts on like the iPads in our, and like anyway, lots of little stories like that. So it was always kind of there, but it wasn't really until I was like um 14 that I found um yoga. I started practicing yoga at like my local YWCA, and just immediately really connected with the practice of just, you know, the definition of vinyasa movement, which is just the coordination of breath and movement to still the mind. And yeah, just right away I was really interested with yogic and Eastern philosophy, and learning about the chakras and learning about, um, I guess, anatomy and how those things kind of all interrelate. And then over the course of like a few years, then I was like, I turned 17 and then really got into meditation and Ashtanga yoga. And that sort of brought me into studying just more things in relation to um, India in general, and then was like
Yeah.
reading about Vedic and Indian astrology, and then that sort of brought me back to Western astrology, and I was like, wow, I see it now. And it was like, then I went like, was like, okay, astrology, yeah.
So let me get this right. You were, was it 12 when first started reading charts or looking at them? I like
Yeah,
cafe astrology.
I saw mine first at 11, but I was, yeah, it was like 12, 13 that I was like looking at other people's charts for the first times and like figuring out what it meant to do that or how it worked.
So, oh my, so yeah, that's Saturn, right? Like on your, that Saturn has like been on a path. It feels like you're like, there's only so much time from like you like Saturn like shot out of your mother's womb, and it's like we must
Oh my God.
like get in all of the sort of astrology and wisdom that we can. That's
Yeah, I mean, it's a Gemini Saturn, so he's a voracious learner when it comes to yeah, trying to absorb information. But I think that's also the dynamic between like the Saturn and Moon, because the Saturn is like loves a good old textbook. Like I
Mhm.
don't know, it's so nerdy, but like even in high school, like I would like just buy physics and chemistry textbooks. Like I, I had to have like multiple for like the class that I was taking. And I know this sounds so ridiculous, but
No, this is
I
I'm envious. I wish I could absorb some of this.
I can't. I literally I don't know how to. It's the Saturn Moon thing. That's what I was trying to say. So it's like there's just that combination of like the
Ah,
Saturn, the curiosity, and then the Moon, which is like just loves to kind of absorb it all. Because the other main thing too with the languages that was going on was that like, yeah, my mom and I would sort of be talking, or she would teach me words, but what I would attribute it actually most to was like when I was younger, I had this little DVD player, um, and I would like watch a movie every night, and I would like watch the same one in English, until I like really kind of not remembered it word for word, but like knew what all the scenes were. And then I would start putting on like different audios or different subtitles and like watching them over and over. And there was maybe like 4 or 5 movies that I did over like some years. Like, oh my gosh, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and like Haunted Mansion and Twitches. Like some of those movies, like I just absorbed in like all the different languages. And then I didn't touch them for years, but then it was like when I got into middle school and high school and like started taking Spanish and French and Latin, it was like right there. And I was like, what? I was like, it was already in my subconscious somehow from having like watched all of those yeah, movies. So yeah.
wow. I feel like I'm like, can that if I just like if I just listen to textbooks in my sleep or movies, maybe I can absorb it too.
You probably can. I mean, you definitely can. I definitely think like there's an amount to what we absorb in a subconscious way that over time can like come out of nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so you've gone your do you translate this is sort of the natural question. Are you translating astrological texts with your Latin skills?
Yeah. So yes, like in a quick answer, but like in terms of something like a major project I have, like not really.
Sure,
What
sure.
I do is
Okay.
mostly like, and a shout out to like the fucking CCAG, because like we
Yeah.
wouldn't, none of us would be anywhere in terms of like our recovery of traditional astrology without that. Um, so like, well, maybe for anyone who doesn't know, and basically, and I find this like these stories so fascinating. And like at first, like when I was
Yes.
learning about traditional astrology, like I don't know, I was like, oh, whatever. Like I took like Chris Brennan's course, and you started going through the history, and I was like, yeah, whatever. It's like, yeah, they did it in like the medieval period, and then it got to like Renaissance Europe, and then like whatever happened in the Project Hindsight, and like here we are. But like it's so interesting. Like it like in like the late 1890s, all these scholars got together and started scourging the whole world for in different libraries and monasteries and observatories, and like got
Hmm.
together all of the ancient or like retranscribed manuscripts of Greek astrological texts. So like the CCAG is the catalog of Greek astrological codices. And so thanks to them, it took like 60 years or so to get like 12 massive volumes together, and they're all named after the cities that they recovered the manuscripts. And so there's like the Florentinos from Florence, and the Venetos from Venice, and Romanos from Rome, and all these different cities where they got all these texts. And now
Yeah.
most of them are available online in like a PDF form.
Okay.
Um, Granted, it's Greek, so it's all in Greek.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, for myself, like what I am doing nowadays is I go through the initial pages of each volume, which like kind of shows where like the collections are from, that will have several hundred fragments in each collection, and kind of just see what looks interesting, because most of them have been translated, but not all of them.
Okay.
And so I have my big ass like lexicons. They're like huge hardcover textbooks, not textbooks, like they're lexicons.
Yeah.
And I'm just, yeah, I just do like independent projects with certain authors. I have hopefully I'm looking to do like a Patreon or something soon where I can start sharing them. But yeah, I just haven't had time to devote enough to doing some of that. But
So you're translating them from the Greek.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Wow. And so that was 100 years. That started approximately 100 years before Project Hindsight.
Yeah.
And so since we're on the topic, it's interesting. I
Yeah.
just had a conversation with my friend, our friend, Gabe Rosas, who
Yeah.
studied at Project Hindsight. And so for those who have no idea what Project Hindsight is, like how did they sort of stumble upon these texts? And maybe we can talk a little bit about the beginnings of Hellenistic or traditional astrology, if you will, or like the reemergence.
Yeah. I'll definitely just say up front that I don't know the history as intricately as like Chris. Just I mean, of course, because he's Chris, but like he just published a video with Demetra George where they were sort of responding to the House division debates,
Yeah.
where they actually talked a lot about like the early stages of this process. So I would definitely recommend anyone go watch that if you're curious to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess like it sort of began, I'd say, and again, from how much I've put together from this, I wasn't there.
Oh, but yeah, maybe I might reframe too. Because I think maybe explain it the way you would a client when someone's like, okay, like, tell
Okay,
me
yeah.
about astrology.
Yeah. So like basically it definitely I'd say began in earnest after like the 1980 Great Conjunction in Libra, because that was like the first conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, these big major kind of planetary cycles that was shifting into an air sign, which
Yeah.
canonically brings back ancient knowledge and massive transmission of information. So that happened in 1980, and that was when scholars, astrologers really began to start looking at these texts. Because there was a lull period where for years they were sitting in the Greek, but they weren't getting kind of pulled back into the English yet. And so James Herschel Holden, who was an astrologer, also was a classicist, began doing like a lot of his own private translation work of the majority of like the large extant texts. And they sort of weren't published until like years later. They had kind of sat in his own private library for a while. And then, so that was like mostly in the 80s and 90s, he was doing that. And then I want to say it was around, 1992, which was Saturn in Aquarius. We just
Mhm.
kind of hit the end now of that return of Project Hindsight's
Yeah.
initial stages, where basically it was this group of these astrologers, these three guys named Rob Hand, and Rob Schmidt, who all sort of had different talents. And like, Rob Hand was famously talented academician, astrologer, scholar, linguist. And Robert Schmidt, who was like a mathematician and knew ancient Greek really well, ancient philosophy, and Rob Zoller, who studied Latin and medieval philosophy and was an astrologer. And so they kind of all came together and was like, okay, let's pull apart the CCAG. And Rob Zoller and Rob Hand also pulled apart like all the Latin manuscripts as well. So they were like, let's just start. And there was even like a Hebrew track where they had a translation of Ibn Ezra from Meir Epstein. And so they were sort of really beginning to bring a lot of the different ancient manuscripts, not just Greek or not just Hellenistic, into English in like the mid 90s. And yeah, it's been 30 years. So most of them have been translated because Saturn has completed the first stage of that cycle. So we're in a cool time now.
It's interesting because I think about if that didn't happen, I don't know if I would have gotten into astrology. Like, what about you? Like, do you ever think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say it would have hooked me as much as I felt, interested by what I was learning from modern astrology, but without the richness of, and not even just richness, but like just the vastness of how wide astrology was used in so many different ways, from medical astrology to, theurgy and magical astrology to war inceptions, like horror, like there's just so much. And it's really awesome that now we have like the tech and the ancient wisdom, and we just kind of get to play around with like so many new and up and coming approaches to astrology.
So I want to phrase this. You've spent you've had astrology with you in your life, your entire adult life, right? This is something like so rich inside you. When you get clients and they ask you, or people, right? Like, what is astrology?
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell them?
Yeah, that's the question of the day there, because that's like, if that's not Saturn in Pisces, I don't know what is. But yeah, it's like, I think at the end of the day, what I always come back to is like this quote from Rob Hand, um, who's just said that astrology is applied mysticism.
Okay.
And it's like, and again, applied mysticism, very Saturn and Pisces kind of thing, because
Yeah.
it's like, with the mystic approach to spirituality, it's all about the internal experience with the symbols and the archetypes that exist within you, and the way that divinities sort of reveals it to you. And that's what's so cool about astrology, is because yeah, we can all observe it and track it and measure it, but like it's completely different for every individual. And so in this way, looking at it as applied mysticism, we sort of lose that like Saturn control piece of like, well, do we have free will, or is it all fated? And it's like, it doesn't matter. It's applied mysticism. By practicing astrology, we're just realizing that we're already all at one with the cosmos, and that everything is just playing out exactly as it's supposed to. So I think astrology is just a perspective on being that reflects the inner and outer experiences.
That was brilliantly put, and I'm going to steal that. Astrology is applied mysticism, as taken from Robert Hand.
Yes. Hmm.
So good. So you're a consulting astrologer, you have clients,
Hmm.
and you've organized an astrology conference, or co-organized an astrology conference on Twitter. You have
Hmm.
an astrology podcast. Um, you just released how would you describe, it's a poster, but describe
Yeah.
this to me.
Yeah, so it's a poster, but it's more than that too, because it's a tool,
Yeah.
and it's like a teacher. It really is like seeing astrology come alive in front of you when you can really sit with it and look at it. So it's a great thing to have if you're a student of astrology and are looking to learn, especially like traditional astrology. It's sort of a mandala,
Yeah.
which
I
is
would say, what is it for those?
right. Yeah, it's a large image of several different interlocking features of astrology, and how we, you know, assess planets and how we measure where they are in the sky. It's a
Yeah.
tool to really look at how all those things kind of come together, and things like all the fixed stars. There's like 160 stars written around it. You can see all the levels of the essential dignities and the subdivisions, and kind of all these things just in one glance, which is really nice to sort of meditate on, and see how things interlock and kind of find little patterns with it. And yeah.
And there's an accompanying book, right?
Yes. Yep. There's a guidebook that explains essentially what you're looking at in all of the rings of the diagram.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's just, I've got put a lot of my own work in there in terms of like, um, yeah, working with some of the smaller layers, like the 12th parts and the monomoria, the single degrees, and like, yeah, just some of my own diagrams, like even with the fixed stars too, like, um, I pulled out this appendix from Ptolemy where he like talks about like 32 different kinds of like Paran configurations that like they looked at that like no one talks about. And so like I've made diagrams to like show all these relationships, and just like lots of little things. So it might sound complex or advanced, but I explain everything really plainly, so that if you're new to it, you can dive into it and really sit with it. But also if you're more familiar with it, there should be some exciting things there for everyone.
I'm going to order mine as soon as I get off. I was going to do it before this call and I didn't have a moment. Um, and I'm like, this is an astro personal question, perhaps, but because I know that you've studied so much, and I've heard you work with a lot of different, I want to say like systems, like the 12 parts and things like this. How do you when you're doing a consultation, how do you enter a chart?
Yeah. Well, I guess the first thing I'll say is that it will kind of depend on because I offer a few different kinds of consultations. If I'm just looking at a natal
Okay.
chart, like maybe regardless
Yeah.
of what the context of who or what
Sure.
we're going to be talking about,
Yeah.
and it will be different because that's sort of the magic too, is that and that's not what people want to hear, but like,
No, I want the insider stuff.
yeah, well, I mean, it can be different. Often I'll say like, if I'm not going right to what is speaking to me, like I always start with the ascendant, because the ascendant is like,
Okay.
Nina Griffin sort of taught like this concept of like the metadata in a chart, where there is like in an email, information that is being sent from one person to another. But in an email is also like encoded all of this information about like how many bytes of data are in it and when it was sent and the IP address, right? And like all these little things that aren't a part of the substance of what we care about to read right up front,
Yeah.
but that are like making a foundation for a lot of like um, fundamental ways the chart is operating, or that, an email can actually physically get from one place to another, is through having this data like coded and tracked. And so I think my first approach to a natal chart is assessing what that metadata is in the chart, and then seeing how all of the specific factors are communicating as like a layer on top of that. So for me, that's like basically assessing all of the rulers of the nativity,
Yeah.
looking at the important places in the chart, like the ascendant, the sun and moon, but all of their rulers, the lot of fortune and spirit, but then like the meta, like the rulers, like what are the configurations between um, these different places, and what does it say about those things communicating? Like if someone has the Lord of the lot of fortune in aversion to the Lord of the ascendant, there is just like in their chart, there's going to be this struggle in terms of interacting and facing with the events that show up in our life and having agency and control, managing when difficult circumstances might arise. But say maybe the Lord of fortune is conjunct the lot of spirit, right? And so it's somehow showing that their circumstances inspire them to action, right? It's like, there's 100,000 different ways this will all play out. But the idea is just like that these rulers of the important places in our chart really show the stability and essence of our chart, and like what the scale and scope of like someone's destiny is. And then you see how that's written into the world through, the house rulerships, which is the more, I guess, concrete step that you would maybe take after that.
Is consulting your favorite part of astrology? What is your favorite part of astrology?
Oh, I mean, I feel like I can't not say consulting, because like that's the gift of it all, is, just being able to sit with someone and again be real and like talk about it, and find what's going on and see how that can, illuminate someone temporarily for maybe whatever they're going through, that it can be a really powerful tool for people that are going through difficult times. There's nothing as rewarding as that, I'd say, and I'm so privileged to be able to work with people in that capacity. So in that sense, I feel like it's tough to say anything but that. But
Sure.
at the same time, I feel like it's also very like a Piscean thing to, or it's a very Saturn, Moon, and Pisces thing maybe, to feel like simultaneously so pulled in two, like by the essence of time, that like there's a future and a past, and like my memories, and like my wanting to reminisce on the past and dream about the future. But like what is so nice to me about astrology is like, oh my God, like we have a way to segment time and like talk about the quality of time. And like I can't, I just have to think back in my memories about like my childhood, or like, oh, this certain year it's like, oh, if I actually like go and study what cycles were happening then, like it's not only making me sort of like at ease with the sense that like the past is in the past and it's never happening again, because like I know in
Yeah.
my mind like it existed, it was programmed, like it happened as it was archetypally supposed to. But then at the same time, like it gives that awareness of like, oh well, like if I see this configuration showing up again somehow, like it can occur in some capacity again. So it's, yeah.
I found that to be, and maybe taking a moment for people who are having Saturn configuration, since again, Saturn moved into Pisces today. I found that to be one of the biggest gifts of astrology, is to locate where you are in the story. So as you said, to know when the difficult times come up, but you can also to be able to trace back the story of the difficult times, to know what you're going to have to deal with before you're even in it, is such a gift. It can be a bummer, but ultimately a huge gift.
Yeah. And again, like just astrology, you know, it's like a hologram, it's a fractal, right? It's like every way we approach the diamond, like there's more facets and bezels and like cuts and like beautiful prisms coming out of it. Like it's just infinitely self-replicating, that in one way we hate that because it's so beyond what we can understand, and it's really hard to conceptualize how that even works. Like, you know, I'll admit, like sometimes like even it's, you know, not like in an official consultation, but like if I'm meeting someone on the street and like I happen to like, if we talk and I look at their chart, like the chart could be cast wrong and I still read it and they're blown away. You know what I mean? It's like, it's things like that with astrology that are so hard for us to understand and hard to like validate it or like explain it to other people when things like that happen, because it's not logical and it's not linear and it never will be. And that's beautiful because that's what it's supposed to be. So yeah, I just love how astrology just, we won't fully ever understand it.
Was that a reference to The Moment of Astrology by Jeffrey Cornelius?
Oh, I actually haven't read the book, so I know it wasn't.
Oh, I mean, that's the, I mean, it's one of the, I read books. I'm going to say like it's one of the few books I've read, but sometimes, no, I love this book. And that's one of the premises, right? Is that like there is this moment that transpires between the client and the astrologer. And so that's the reason this sort of, you know, the case for astrology is being a form of divination, right? And so that's the reason that I can pull off someone's chart and I can actually have the wrong time, but still come up with the right information, right? That's he gets into in that book. That's what I was like, oh,
okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I haven't, I know that's like a staple text, but I haven't read it. But that's interesting because it's of course something I think we all see or encounter at one point. Like, oh, sorry, there's like snow and ice on my roof, and like in huge chunks, it will like fall off onto my back porch right here. So I was just like very alarmed because I just saw like a like iceberg. But anyway,
and you got quiet too, it like hit, and then you were like silent.
Because the other day it sort of broke a table, so I was like hoping it wasn't a huge drop again. But
outside, I take it, a table outside.
Yeah, it's like a little bit bent.
Not coming into your house. Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of Saturn.
Yeah, right. I know. I'm like, oh, what just hit the ascendant or something? But I'm not gonna look. What were we saying? Oh yeah, the moment of astrology. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at it for sure.
What, I'm curious because you still have a yoga practice. You said you're about to start teaching. How do you integrate the two, and why did you choose this sort of path of traditional astrology over like Vedic astrology?
Yeah, I know it's yeah, like I've had so many times where I've been so close to like going full sidereal, and like I just want to study, you know, like study with Freedom Cole or whoever, and like just go full Eastern. And that will happen at some point, but I guess it was more just like the resources that were available to me in terms of books and teachers and videos on YouTube, you know, whatever. That Western astrology and traditional Western astrology was just more readily available, and also I guess my interest in that I can like read Latin and Greek, and so that was very appealing because, well, me and a few friends were like starting a Sanskrit study group, so we can like slowly begin to like reading some of those texts. But yeah, I guess it's like I was very I guess just drawn to the fact that I already had kind of had an in with Western astrology. But yeah, I guess in terms of integrating them, like I
You're silent. I think
oh oh no.
oh, did you get you got silent. Did I get a bubble for a moment? Did you get the bubble of death from me?
I saw you freezing, but it was
Okay.
updating like maybe every 2 seconds, so I didn't know if you could.
Gosh, my internet's usually good. What's for strange choppy waters? I've upset someone over here. I apologize.
Well, I'm wondering though too, because like from my end at least, my whole time my camera's been clear and it hasn't glitched. So I'm hoping, I mean, I don't know how the software works, but like if on our each end it's recording like the
Yeah,
data,
we'll
right?
figure.
And that you
I think we'll be okay. Yeah. Okay. So it'll.
hopefully, I have no idea,
I
but
think so
hopefully,
because this is
I feel like that makes
this is
sense.
the internet. So it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
We're
Let's
just gonna
hope.
keep going with this, and if not, it'll be our choppy water talk.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But
Saturn, we kind of call it right, like Saturn disrupting the sort of our. We're trying to have a flowing
right,
conversation. It's like, hi,
right.
you aren't
I
talking about me
know.
enough. It wasn't enough that
I
you wore all
know.
black.
I know. Just trying to have like a little sad song here, but alas, Mercury is also combust in Pisces, so what are we gonna do? And the moon is full, right?
You
Like
know,
it's just
I live with Mercury combust in Pisces, so I thought that maybe I would just skate through these challenges, but maybe I'm amplifying it.
oh my gosh. Oh wow.
I
Well,
know it's a shocker.
happy solar return. When is that already happening soon, maybe?
I was born at 0 degrees Aries. Very proud of this. It's my one Astro Pride moment. So not yet, which I get excited. I'm like, ooh, spring. I'm gonna blossom.
Oh my God. Well, happy early
Even if I
birthday.
can't.
Because
Thank you, thank you. If I can
yeah,
survive this Pisces season and the technical difficulties.
yeah. Well, hey, you've probably already had like your Converse Progress solar return then, if you're going backwards in time. So happy birthday then.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, we're gonna see. Okay, that's the phase 2 question. I want to like in my brain, I'll just go, this is what Mercury and Pisces is. It's like, let's go here all its ways all the time, which can be
Mm-hmm.
distracted. So, okay. So you started the Sanskrit study group, but you're like, well, I speak Greek and Latin already. So maybe I'm going to go this route for the moment, but you still have a yoga practice. You study traditional.
Yeah.
Even though you don't do the two, like, how do you in your person bring the two together? If that makes sense.
Yoga and astrology or Eastern and Western astrology?
Either.
Okay.
Take that question.
Well,
You can take that question as you'd like.
okay. Well, in terms of yoga and astrology, they need each other for me. If I'm not in my body, I'm only in my head. So it's like I just need for my well-being time, and it doesn't have to be an asana or a vinyasa practice every morning. It's just some kind of yogic practice that can bring me to stability. So whether that's going to be meditation if I'm up for it, which most days I'm all right, but some days I just it's like maybe I'll do some pranayama instead, which is just some breathing or just some slow movement and kind of resting. However that looks, it varies. And again, healing modalities aren't linear. Saturn and Pisces, right? You can't assign a prescription for that spiritual process. But yeah, so I definitely, my mornings incorporate every day somehow some essence of a spiritual practice. Also, like I'm really interested in Ayurveda. And so eventually I would love to, and I'll be studying medical astrology later this year. but my goal will hopefully be to integrating like Ayurvedic practices with medical astrology and yeah, make kind of like or in herbalism and alchemy. Like I'm really interested in all these kinds of things. So I'd like to syncretize that somehow.
I love that. You know, it's funny, as you're talking, I realized we were talking about, you mentioned earlier, Saturn and Pisces having something to do with like regulation and
Mm.
of the metaphysical. And I literally, just as I was hopping on this call with you, I got an email from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. If you're familiar with them, they're like it's like they're a holistic nutrition school online. They've been around for a very long time, but they just made an announcement that they're partnering with Deepak Chopra to do to bring his teachings to sort of integrate those two things. And I was like, wow, like you make this
Wow.
announcement as
The
Saturn
morning of
is into Pisces.
yeah.
That's interesting. That sort of popped into my head as you were speaking.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot over the next few years, like, again, how these structures bring themselves into a way that's beyond, like, just like we said, having the document signed so people can practice them, but how are like we reorienting the perspective in everyone's consciousness and awareness? Like, is this promoting like actual, positive practices spiritually, mentally, physical, emotionally in people's lives, or is it falling down the other half of the Pisces train, which is the illusion? And so straddling that line for 7 billion people is no easy task, and that won't happen in 3 years, but we're going to expect to see like what that debate is about, like legalizing things like psychedelic
Yeah.
substances and plant medicine is going to be huge over the next. I think that's also a Pluto and Aquarius thing that we'll see a lot in the next 20 years. But yeah, for the next 3 years at least, it's going to be quite interesting times. Like you said, the regulation of the metaphysical. So yeah.
I have to ask you, as we're sort of winding down here, when it comes to astrology regulations, certifications, I'd love your thoughts. Are you for? Do you have any sort of do you have any certifications? Are you an advocate? Are you? I'm sure you've thought about this.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not certified by a board. I'm certified, like I've completed Chris Brennan's Hellenistic Astrology course. I'm a certified Hori practitioner from the School of Traditional Astrology. I guess in that sense, like at the moment, those are like the two official qualifications I have.
Sure.
You call that like official because they're not like a board entity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is such a great discussion, especially for Saturn in Pisces, because it is, like I think the idea is great. Like we need some regulation.
Yeah.
We can't have none. So whether that's NCGR or ESAR, ethics certificate, whatever program people are doing, I think it's a good thing. I think astrological education isn't going to hinder anyone. I think what we need to do is maybe be clear, and I'll be honest, I haven't like researched the current like boards and examinations super in depth, but like what I just imagine being like the best way for this to go forward for people is that not only that maybe there's like enough communication between the multiple boards, because there are like different organizations that oversee these certification exams, but that there is enough variety that is targeted enough to people so that it's like people aren't having to learn or practice learn or prove their knowledge of astrology that they're maybe not going to practice. Like it's okay if you're not a traditional astrologer. There's nothing wrong with that. But like make their examinations like specific enough to the field and rigorous enough to the field that they are practicing. And again, I'm not saying they're not, and I'm not saying that they're already. Just re-emphasizing that, like, I think as long as someone has a path in astrology that they want to pursue, and there is a board and an examination that is overseen by obviously these groups and boards of astrologers, that I don't think it's a problem. Obviously, not everyone can afford some of these certifications, and that's where again it's tricky because you can be a great astrologer, you can be self-taught, and I just feel like there's no right answer here. Saturn in Pisces, I just can't. I feel like I'm at I'm at like this freaking end of the road with like that idea because
No, and I didn't expect you to have. I didn't expect you to have an answer. It's curious because I think about this myself, and I've studied with Austin Coppock and Adam Ellenboss, Nightlight Astrology. So I've studied the sort of teacher route. Adam Summer, which I appreciate, and I really like that education. But it's interesting because part of me is like, I don't want to have to I don't like this idea that like anyone can make a school, which I don't think you can. I should say this. Part of me doesn't like regulations, period, right?
Yeah.
But that's something that's been coming up in my practice recently. Is a lot of people coming to me. They'll sign up for an astrology reading or like a 30-minute session. And they'll be like, well, I already know my chart. I've looked it up in the internet. I just need you to answer some questions for me. And like this happens like really often. And I'm like, okay, well, who do you study with? Where did you get this information? And they'll be like, oh, the internet, like TikTok. And I'm like, okay, but what astrologers? Oh, I don't know. I've had people hand me reports that they've gotten from like an astrologer. And so I'm like, oh, maybe there needs to be sort of, something more robust. And I'm like, giving them lists of books and things to study. But that sort of side of the coin's been coming up for me a lot lately. And I didn't know if you've had that experience at all of people just not understanding this. Astrology is actually multitudes. It's important to know where you're getting your information.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's so tough because maybe there's a sense of, and not even like that you need a certification if you're even just like a student and aren't looking to practice, but like because so much information is available online and a lot of it is BS, frankly, because it's just coming from anyone. There has to be some value. I'm really
Right?
I'm really torn here. This is going to be a great discussion to continue, definitely just in the next years, because it's inevitable that like we have to do something about like getting people on track with like even if not even that like you need to learn all of these fields or whatever, but like the awareness of like the scope of astrology, what it does, and just getting people aware that like again, you need the right tool for the right job. So if that's a certification in horary astrology so that you can answer questions, then like tell people like, it's like we need to let people know that there are different like options somehow. So I don't even know how to do that, but
planting seeds here, planting seeds.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of building off that as we wind down here. I said that 10 minutes ago. I really like talking to you. Talking to you. You have a podcast where you educate people. Will you tell me about that? And for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, start from the beginning.
Yeah. So my great friend of mine, Stella Mowat, is an astrologer, and yeah, we decided to start a podcast last year where we talk about different things in astrology. And yeah, we like did a bunch of episodes last year that are kind of just on like different introductory concepts, and then we just sort of restarted up a few months ago. It's a few weeks ago. And we are doing a read through of James Holden, so that awesome translator guy that I mentioned earlier. His translation of Rhetorius the Egyptian, who was a Hellenistic astrologer in like the late Hellenistic period.
Okay.
And yeah, we decided to do this because, again, we wanted to like make accessible like this kind of really solid foundation in what the principles are. And we wanted to, like, we chose Rhetorius because he gives a really cool perspective being at the sort of end of the Hellenistic period where he's sort of beginning to talk like a medieval astrologer does, or
Yeah.
give examples of some techniques that were definitely just developed later, right? Because he came later. So we want to do like a reading from like a Hellenistic author, a medieval author, a Renaissance author. But yeah, we picked Rhetorius because he's pretty easy to read. He's not as like wordy or yeah, heady as like some other authors, but also again he gives a really great perspective, and it's a great introduction for beginners. He talks about all the basics, and we're explaining it and giving our thoughts and ideas on it and talking about some chart examples with these things. So yeah, it's a really fun time. We're doing live streams on YouTube, so you can just join in and hop on and chat your comments or questions. So yeah, they're on
Ooh.
Wednesdays, usually Wednesday morning Eastern time, like early afternoon Eastern time and like mid morning Western. So yeah.
Ooh. So Mercury's day, sometime in the morning or afternoon, which is totally mercurial to like not decide on the time.
I know
Um,
it's tough because Stella, they're still in college and like they have classes on that day. So sometimes it can vary, but it's just follow our Twitter. I guess I'll
no,
say
no,
we're always updating what our schedule is there. So
no, no, I love it. So yeah, what are all the places for people to follow for you?
yeah, okay. So I'm on Twitter and Instagram and marginally on Facebook, but not really. At my handle Omegastrology, one
Okay.
A in between the Omega and the astrology.
Astrology.
And you can find the Mercuranians, which is the name of the podcast, on YouTube and Spotify and Twitter. And you can find KazimiCon, which is the, like you mentioned, the awesome free online Twitter conference that I'm a part of, an awesome group of people putting that together. And we are announcing KazimiCon 2 very soon, which is exciting. So stay tuned for that if you're looking to connect with other astrologers digitally on the webs. And I think that's it. My website too, of course. My books are open if you're curious to meet and chat about astrology. So yeah.
I love it. So Omegastrology and all the places.
hmm
I pronounced it wrong. I said
It's I know.
say it. Say it.
Mercuranians.
Mercuranians. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's on Spotify and YouTube and Twitter.
Yeah.
Yes. And Instagram, I know as well. So the Mercuranians in all the
Yes.
places.
Yeah.
Omegastrology.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Omegastrology.
I
All
can't.
the places.
Words are hard for me. And I'm extra self-conscious because you're like, you speak like 7 languages. And I'm like, it's words are, I can speak images.
You probably can. I mean, that's the thing. Like my hand, I don't want to like degrade myself like too much because I try not to talk like that. But my art is like, I'm sure you could draw circles around me. So
I mean, I don't know if I can draw circles around you, but I can take a photograph.
oh,
This is not a competition. I'm a very competitive person, but if I even try to get this in a competition, I'm going to lose. So I'm backing away from this. Is what I'm doing. Backing away. Okay, so follow you in all the places.
yeah.
And I will have notes in this. And buy the poster. Does the poster have a name? I can't. I didn't write my notes.
Yeah. So it's called the Codex Mundi.
The Codex Mundi.
Yeah. Yes. So you can get the poster or the guidebook on my website.
Do you know Kristen Mathis of Mysteria Mundi?
Yeah.
I'm interviewing her on Sunday.
Cool.
Are you friends?
We haven't really chatted. I've been wanting to though. I've just been so busy, but I love her work. I follow her on all the medias, and I think she's awesome. But we haven't really chatted. But I'd love to.
She's super approachable, and she just like is just a maniac, just translating the I think she translates Greek and Latin too. I think the two of you are, and did so at a very young age. I think there's a lot of crossover between the two of you.
Yeah, I'll have to chat with her.
You're on the East Coast. I feel like you
Oh,
should.
really? Oh, she's East
She's
Coast.
in Brooklyn, right? You're in
Oh,
Massachusetts.
yeah. Oh my gosh, then definitely.
It's doable.
Yeah.
Maybe we can all have lunch.
Yeah.
I get to have lunch with her whenever I go to New York, which is lovely. I'm having lunch with her. I'm publicly stating this next week. Get to
Well,
Brooklyn.
I was just gonna say I want to come to Brooklyn. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm gonna meet her, but somewhere by the Brooklyn Museum. I just like to go to the Brooklyn Museum by myself. It's my happy place. If anyone's curious.
Well, enjoy next week. That sounds like a ball of fun. That's gonna be the Mercury Cazimi, right? In Pisces on Neptune. That's freaking crazy.
You know, I live with this, so I'm like Mercury, Neptune, like
bring it on.
bring it on. It's like, how much further spaced out can I
I know.
get?
I have Mercury, partile, trine, Neptune, so the Mercury Neptune reality is very real. It's very here. Yeah.
What else am I missing? Follow you, like you. What's coming up? That's the last thing.
Oh man, see, that's the
Kazemi-con.
thing. Yeah, KazemiCon's coming up. I have some other things I haven't really announced yet because I've just been in the aftermath of launching and shipping all those posters and editing the guidebook. So
They
my
sold out in like a minute.
yeah, they're available now though. You can get them now again. But the first round, yeah, we got extras like ready to go. But yeah, I was very blessed. I was like, wow, I just wasn't expecting that reaction from the community. So it was really beautiful. I was really grateful.
I'm like, why didn't this exist before? This is brilliant.
Well, thank you. But yeah, are you heading to any conferences this year?
Yeah, I'm gonna be at NORWAC.
Yay! I'll
So
see
we'll
you
see
there
each other.
then.
And then I'm planning to go to Lilydale. Are conferences are tickets on sale yet?
Not yet. I was actually just talking with Nicole the other day, and I think they're announcing them soon. But yeah, it's going to be. I think it will be called the Astrology. Maybe I shouldn't say. They just slightly renamed it.
Okay. We
Yeah.
won't talk about that.
But anyway, Lilydale, September. Be there. I'll be there.
Yeah. Any
People
other
be there.
conference things I should know about? What else are you doing? Is there something like, I'll be there? Tell me where to go. Where you be?
Yeah. Literally right now, I'm gonna be traveling this summer, so I'm sort of probably won't be as out as I am at the moment. But yeah, things are kind of my plans are sort of just falling into place as they come right now. So I
Where are
don't I
you
wish I
going?
had
Can
more.
you give a sneak peek in your travels?
Yeah, well, I'm going on a big road trip with Stella, so I'm gonna fly to Vegas to meet them, and then that's like mid-May, and we're gonna drive up to Seattle to go to Norwalk, and then come down through the Rockies and yeah, camp and hike. So that will be like a month, and then I'll be home for like a little bit, and then I'm gonna be going to Spain for a few weeks to visit a friend, and there's like a music festival there, and yeah, and I'm figuring out the months after that, but probably will be over there for a couple weeks, maybe a few months.
What months?
It will be like July, June, and sorry, June, late June, July, and August.
I was like, can we organize and get a bunch of astrologers to come crash your party in Spain? That would be great.
Oh my God. Well,
because I was like,
well, no, I was just gonna say if there's an interest, let's get the Airbnb. Like,
oh my God, we totally should. I've been like, Crystalline and I are going. They're organizing a Greece trip, so I'm going to Greece, and I don't know my plans after. And then they're going to Ireland. But I was like, I bet we could get a bunch of astrologers to go to Spain. Spain's so rad. What part are you going to be in? All over?
I'll be in northern Spain in the Basque Country for a week or so, and then traveling around after that.
Can we just like put the seed out there that I'm going to crash your Spain plans? That we're like, anyone,
please,
all of our European astrologer friends, anyone else? Can we kind of organize that we all kind of show up in Spain together? It'll be an unofficial astrology conference.
No, please, let's do this.
It'll be so amazing. We'll just eat tiny fish and drink olive oil Tiny coffees.
That's literally my dream. I would love that so much. I'll also just maybe plug plant really quickly that
Yeah.
I've sort of been in talks with. It all sort of began on like a Twitter space a few weeks back. There's an eclipse happening next spring, a total solar eclipse that's going over the United States. And there's a group of astrologers that are looking to get together and buy like this 20-person Airbnb. It'll be super cheap. We'll all go see the eclipse together in Texas. And if you're interested, message me for details.
Oh, I'm gonna message you. I love Texas. What part?
Undecided. There's like two or three places that we were looking at that honestly part of it is that I can't remember actually the name of the city that had the Airbnb that we really liked. Let me look at a map real quick. It's sad. I think it was Dallas. Yeah.
Oh, I love
It was
Dallas.
just outside of Dallas. I've never been.
There's good art.
Ooh.
I was there briefly. I'm acting like I've spent all this time in Dallas. I was almost like killed in Texas. That was scary. Not Dallas. I was on a road trip with myself. That's another story. I love this. I love that like Saturn sort of loosened up and now we're just talking about putting structure to the metaphysical, like organizing all of these conferences. You see the evolution of this? We started with like the rain pounding on you in the shower, and now that we're like, oh, it's cool. We're gonna figure out how to navigate this and organize our own things.
Yes. Grassroots astrological planning and organizing. Hell yeah.
I think it took us over an hour, but I think we didn't even know it. But we had a mission and we solved it. We figured it out.
We actually did though. Like we actually did. So Spain, Texas, let us know.
Join us. And I'll give myself an outro because I always forget to. And you the final say here. So I am Vivi Henriette of Art of the ZODIAC. I do these talks. I was doing them at IG Live forever. And I missed the IG Live, the sort of like the live component of Instagram, but these are a little better quality. So the idea is that if you want to join live, people haven't figured this out yet, there will be a StreamYard link so you can come and join us and have conversations, but these are going to be edited to whatever degree I figure out and shared in all the places where you get podcasts, YouTube videos, et cetera. As I mentioned earlier, this Sunday, March 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Kristen Mathis, who has the Mysterium Mundi project, where she's been translating the Orphic hymns, is coming on to do round 2 of Talk with me, where we're going to go through the personalities of each planet. So that'll be cool.
Oh, I will have to be joining. That sounds delectable.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on to this sort of experimental early days of the StreamYard.
I love it. I'm so honored to be here. I've loved listening to so many of these hours of talk. We've had so many amazing people come on, so I'm really excited and honored to be a part of that.
I'm excited to do many more because I will call you up.
Yes. Cameron
Cassidy, Omegastrology, on all the places.
Yes.
Buy the poster. Come to Spain. I think that's good. I think
that's mic drop right there. That's it.
Brilliant. Okay, friend. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
There are no parents, no other adults, no one to interfere with the fun.